So this video is about estimating subtraction. As with addition, as with any other computation that we're estimating, the key is to make the estimate reasonable. Make it reasonable for the situation, for what you want to know, for what you're trying to figure out. So let's do a cooking example. So I have a bag of 535 chocolate chips. At least that's what the side of the bag claims. So that number already is probably a little approximate. And I want to know how many chocolate chips I'll have left over if I use 115 in my cookie recipe and 270 in my pancake recipe. Now there are several ways to do this, just like with addition. So the first, or one way, would be to round each number on its own and then do the subtraction. So I start with 535 chocolate chips, so maybe I round that to 500. Then I'm going to use 115 in my cookies, so that's about 100. Then I'm going to use 270 in my pancake, well that's about 250. So that might be a subtraction that we want to do. So that's a fairly straightforward subtraction. I have 500, I subtract 100, so now I'm at 400. Then I subtract 200, so that puts me at 200. I subtract another 50, that puts me at 150. Or maybe I round 535 to 525, and I round 115 to 125, and I round 270 to 300. Again, that's fine. So the 25s are nice because they're initially going to cancel out. So I have 525 minus 125, so the 25s are gone. So now I'm at 400, and I do 400 minus 300, I'm at 100. Or variations of that. Maybe I have 550 chocolate chips, subtract 100, subtract 300. Or I have 540 chocolate chips, minus 120, minus 270. Right, so you are choosing how to round those numbers. Maybe you round one of them up and you round one of them down, hoping it'll sort of cancel each other out. So you round the 115 up, but you round the 270 down, or vice versa. Now notice, just with these four, I have quite a big range. I have a 50 left over, a 70 left over, 100 left over, 150 left over. These are very different, but again, they're estimates. So the numbers are going to be different depending on how you round those numbers. Now another way to do this is to subtract in parts or groups of numbers. So here's what I mean by that. Here's my 535 minus 115 minus 270. So I can break this up into 535 minus 100 minus 10 minus 5. So these three numbers are just my 115 broken up. And then I can subtract 200 and subtract 70. That's my 270 broken up. Okay? If that's hard for you to get your head around, when you go and buy something at the store, right, and you're going to pay $7.22, you can give $7 and then give 20 cents and then give 2 cents. Okay, and you're giving $7.22. You're just giving it in 3 parts. So that's what's happening here. So if I have to take away or subtract 115, I can subtract 100, and then from that answer subtract 10, and then from that answer subtract 5. So now how I might want to group these is now maybe I want to subtract that 100 and subtract that 200 right away, because those are going to be quick, right? And then maybe I want to subtract the smaller ones. So now I'm going to look at my 10 and my 5 and my 70, and maybe I want to subtract that as 85, or maybe I want to say that's almost another 100. I'm estimating, so I can go ahead and group them together and say, oh, well, if I gave you $10 and then $5 and then $70, that's about $100. So I take my 535, I've subtracted my 100, and I've subtracted my 200. So my 535, I subtracted the 100, that made it 435. Subtract 200, that made it 235. So that's where this number is coming from. And then what I was saying before about minus 10, minus 5, minus 70 is about minus 100. I'm rounding. So now I take 235, I subtract 100, and now I get 135. So by grouping, okay, I didn't round the 535. Okay, I kept it as it was, and what I did was I dealt with what I was subtracting. So I subtracted the 100 and the 200 first, and I said, oh, well, the rest of it is about 100, so I'll subtract 100 from that number. Now, sometimes when you subtract in parts or groups, you might find that you do round or change that initial number that you're subtracting from. So in this case, the 535. Right? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. There's lots of ways to do that. Another way to subtract in parts or groups, so here's my 535 minus 115 minus 270. And what I might want to do here is just grab the two numbers I'm subtracting and approximate how much they are together. So really, I'm approximating an addition. So I'm going to look at these two numbers and I'm going to say, oh, well, here's 100, 200, 300, and then these other parts, they make about 100. So together, this is about 400. Now, not exactly, but approximately. Okay, well, 535 minus 400, not too bad. So 535 minus 400 is going to give me 135. Okay, a fraction example. One of the things you want to do with fractions that's really helpful is look for halves and wholes. Okay, so you want to look for, and I have a typo on this page, this should have S, halves and wholes to subtract. So here I have 7 minus 2 4/5 minus 1 1/3. So I could say, well, 2 4/5 is almost 3. So let's take 2 4/5 and make them into a 3. And then 1 1/3 is about 1 1/2. Or maybe 1. You choose. So now I have 7 minus 3 minus 1 1/2. So 7 minus 3 is 4. And then I need to do 4 minus 1 1/2. So subtract that 1 1/2 in two parts. So take 4 minus the 1. So that you get to 3. And then 3 minus 1/2 gets you to 2 1/2. Or maybe we say 7 minus 2 4/5 is almost 3, and then 1 1/3 is almost 1. So 7 minus 3 minus 7 minus 3 is 4, minus 1 is 3. Another good estimate of this particular equation. Or I can break it up. So I haven't rounded anything yet. I'm just breaking up my numbers. So now I have 7 minus 2 minus 4/5. So just like when we were talking about with the decimals and with the whole numbers, I can go bit by bit. So I can do 7, I could take away 2 and then take away 4/5. I could take away 1 and then take away 1/3. And from here, maybe I want to do some grouping, or maybe I want to subtract bit by bit. So if I take my 7, I minus 2, I minus 1, that gives me 4. So I'm dealing with sort of all the whole parts first. And then looking at the 4/5 and the 1/3, I could say, well, that's about 1. 4/5 is pretty close to 1. 1/3 is sort of small. Again, we're making this an estimate. We're hopefully doing this in our heads. For me, I like to visualize 4/5 and visualize 1/3. I can kind of in my head make a quick rectangle, 5 parts, 4 shaded. That's most of it. Make another rectangle, break it into 3 parts, shade one of them. It's one of those. Well, that one part is bigger than the 5th, but let's just pretend it fits in there. We're estimating. So it's about 1. 4 minus 1 gives me 3. Summary. The subtraction should be much, much, much easier when you're estimating. Hopefully, so easy that you can do it in your head or fairly quickly just using your fingers, or maybe with very little written work, writing some stuff down to help you keep track. Or maybe if you need help visualizing some of those fractions, a quick sketch would be fine. And then I'm going to contradict myself again like I did on the addition. On the assignments, I want you to write more than you need to write. Okay? I want you to be able to do these in your head or on your fingers with very little writing. But in order for me as an instructor to follow what you're doing, to make sure you're on the right track, and for me to understand what's happening, right, I need you to write a lot more down. So write down more on the assignment than you would if you were actually estimating that computation.